What's going on, guys? It's Coach Steven with 15 Pointed Tennis. Now, in part one on the slice, we discussed the basics, all right? And if you're more of a beginner player to intermediate level player, it's okay to probably just use a slice when you're more playing defense or just as a pure changeup. But when you play better offensive opponents, they're going to be really watching you, and once you drop that rack and face open to slice, they're going to be looking to come in, close the net, and volley and have a field day on anything that floats. Now, when you play better defensive players, okay, if you can't be aggressive with your slice and attack, okay, every single time you slice, a good defensive player, they're going to get back on balance in the middle and reset the point every single time. So, guys, in a nutshell, you need different options on your slice. And that's why in this video, we're going to give you the full spectrum of shots from defensive slices to offensive slices, and we're going to show you the mechanics of how to do it. Now, this isn't a strategy video, but I wanted to mention, all right, slicing is going to open up a whole new realm of creativity with your game, and that starts with vertical attack, all right? Your opponent can no longer camp 10 feet behind the baseline if you can bring that slice low and short and make them reach. All right, your opponent can no longer stand right here on the baseline and just cheat inside the court if you're able to punch that slice hard and deep low at their feet. If you play someone who tries to lob you and moonball you and get the ball high out of your strike zone, one good slice to bring that ball down, look, it's very hard to lob off a slice. Once you see it, then once they have to hit the ball instead of lob, then you can run a combo and start putting those players away. And lastly, when it comes to playing defense, okay, you can just rope-a-dope your opponent from behind the baseline, force them to overhit a little bit too much and hit themselves out of the match. So in this video, we're going to assume that your base slice is solid, you have a workable slice, your technique is pretty good, your flow is pretty good, but if you're the player who might only slice in just one or two rare case scenarios and has limited options, I'm letting you know right now, you're in the right place. So we're going to start in like 3 seconds, but before we begin, please do hit that like button, that subscribe button, and that notification bell. It really helps out the channel. So let's get started. Now first we're going to do a quick review of the slicing mechanics of how to deal with balls at different heights in your strike zone, since slice has a much larger strike zone. Now, depending on where the ball is, okay, relative to your elbow position, if the ball is really low in my strike zone, right, I'm going to be hitting that lower, and then again, this is all based on the swing plane. If the ball is really low, I'm going to be hitting that lower inside part of the ball here, okay, which is going to create side spin, and it's going to fade out to my left, okay, it's going to curve off the court. If I contact the ball in the mid part of my strike zone, I'm going to be hitting, see the back of the ball right here? So the exact back of the ball, it's going to be putting back spin, so no side spin one way or the other, right? So inside quadrant, okay, back of the ball. If the slice is high in my strike zone, I'm actually hitting that upper outside quadrant here, and the ball's curving from outside to in. It's drawing back in the court. Very similar to if you're hitting a slice serve. Slice serve is essentially like a very high forehand slice where you're drawing that ball from outside to back in the court. So, just really briefly, you need to know, well, it depends on your grip a little bit, but if you're slicing lower in your strike zone, your shoulders are going to be much more square to the court here. Whereas and in front of you, okay, see this? Whereas if I'm slicing higher in my strike zone, I'm going to be much more turned and closed, and I'm going to hit the ball much more to the side of me here. So, here versus here, all right? and that's going to make a big difference. So you just have to know, like, based on your swing plane, every point in the strike zone, bing, 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 like what part of the ball you hit, where you feel strong at contact, make sure you're not breaking your wrist doing anything crazy like that. Next, we're going to move into the mechanics of how to hit low defensive slice compared to high offensive slice. All right, again, low defensive slice, high offensive slice. I'm going to need a few minutes to sort of fill in the gap, so be patient with me here, stick with me, all right? But right now you have to know that the low defensive slice and high offensive slice are two, in terms of mechanically, very different shots at the opposite ends of the spectrum. Okay, so let's start with low defensive slice. We want that ball, when we hit that slice, to have a heavy backspin and land deep in the court so our opponent can't just load up and put it away for a winner, right? So in terms of mechanically, when I hit the shot, I'm going to get my racket very high above the ball. If the ball's here, the racket needs to be here. If the ball's here, the racket needs to be here. If the ball's too low, I can't get spin. It's got to get above the ball. So swing, in terms of swing plane, I'm going to be swinging from high to low and let the momentum carry it back up high. Again, watch this. High, low, high. Kind of like you're hitting a bunker shot in golf where you're just letting that blade slide under the ball, giving that beautiful trajectory. Now when it comes to offensive slice, I don't want, okay, to hit this ball up here and have it loft with more spin. The ball's already high, right? I don't want to loft with heavy spin, right? When the ball's high, I want to knife down and penetrate, okay, into the court, and I want a little bit of punch. So instead of starting high, okay, we're actually going to start low. So I'm going to get the racket down here, almost like I'm hitting up more of a traditional one-handed backhand. I know it might sound strange, right? You're getting the racket low, loading from down here to hit a high slice. Okay, but stick with me here. Hitting a high slice is pretty much exact same thing. It's similar to when Roger Federer hits his high backhand, his signature backhand smash. All right, even though he's extending up, where does the ball go? The ball snaps down. All right, and same with a proper flat serve. Okay, even though look, I'm going up with the tricep, my wrist, it hits the top of the ball. So look, if I hit the top of the ball with my wrist right here, look, just based on physics, if I hit the top of the ball has to go down. That's just how it works. All right, so when we talk about the low slice to the high slice we're getting high, right, and going down a lot with the shoulder, okay, so using more shoulder to go down. When I talk about hitting the high slice, we need a lot more wrist snap, all right? So let's talk about using the wrist and the forearm, all right? I know I mentioned before in the past, all the racket head speed comes from movement in the tip, all right? So the tip is controlled by the small joint, which is the wrist, controlled by this muscle, which is the forearm, right? So see when I move this forearm back and forth, you see the speed in the tip right here I can get, right? That's a lot more speed than if I were to move even a bigger joint like my shoulder. Even if I have a really strong shoulder, there's not as much speed in the tip compared to this or this right here, okay? So we need to learn, okay, how to, and we mentioned this in the video real briefly on the basics video, you got to learn how to use your forearm to move this tip, right? See, I'm using this forearm muscle right here. Okay, everything is still except this is turning. All right, I'm isolating this muscle. Now, here's how the forearm works. It goes from palm up, facing the sky, to palm down, facing the ground. So sky, ground, sky, ground, sky, ground. If you do this a lot, you're going to really start to feel this forearm muscle work. All right, now I'm doing this. I'm just going to put a racket back in my hand and look. You see? Now, watch how the tip is moving. The tip is moving from low to high, low to high, low to high, low to high. And when you hit a high backhand slice, the tip should be moving from low to high. Now it sounds counterintuitive, right? But even though this is going low to high, my forearm is going to low to high, my shoulder goes from high to low, high to low. So now I'm going to combine these two movements. I'm going to combine this movement with this movement to get this movement right here. Now I'm going to ask you a question. When I do this, is the racket head, is the tip of the racket moving up or is it moving down? Although the racket is moving down here, the tip, I'm still moving my forearm in this way, the tip is moving up. You see that? So that it's an optical illusion. Here the tip is still moving up. So you got to train yourself to go up and snap. So when I hit my high slice, I'm getting loaded here with strings facing the sky. I'm going low to high to low. This tip is going up and over, up and over. So low, high, low. All right? It's very different. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but when most players try to learn the high offensive slice, they're trying to go forward like this. See the difference? Forward versus snapping up. If you go forward, there's no snap. It's just all shoulder, right? You gotta go snap up, and then the shoulder goes down and forward. Okay, it's a big difference. If you don't get this, you won't get any pop. There won't be the speed that you want, right? And again, the ball's gonna kind of fly straight up. And because I'm moving my forearm here, I'm hitting that top of the ball. I'm getting it to go down. What I'm not doing is breaking down here with my wrist, because everyone's trying to just go down with the wrist. And once that wrist breaks, it loses stability. It flies straight up, goes out. I'm not going down with my wrist. I'm going up with my wrist, hitting the top part of the ball, coming down with the shoulder. And we'll show you that in the demos.
Here's the offensive slice in full force. And to show you what's really going on, we'll slow it down a bit. I'm going to get my unit turned, that racket back really loaded. Look, the strings are facing the sky even more so, then high, then low. And you're going to see that as a constant theme throughout, low, high, low. And while this might look like an impractical shot at first, as I thought it would be, because not a whole lot of players play it, it can be very good and very reliable if you get the mechanics right, and that goes for just about any shot you hit. To mention for slice in particular, on the rise is a little bit tougher because you have the angle of the racket going down as the ball is coming up. It's a little easier, like here's on the rise a little bit. It's a little easier if you let the ball just kind of sit there, and so you can punch it through, like this one right here. So this could be a good alternative to maybe a short ball, a high backhand. If you get your opponent guessing or leaning because they think you can only hit a defensive slice, but no, you have that surprise offensive slice in your toolkit. Now those first two are more attacking with that slice. A lot of times I'll play it if someone hits a heavy ball to my backhand. I like the ball low, so I'll just try to bring that ball down.
Alright guys, now before we proceed, just know that when I talk about low, high, low, that's for balls that are actually very, very high in the strike zone, like I'm talking about shoulder level, right, and even above. So, for example, say if I'm hitting a backhand overhead smash, like the Roger Federer signature, right? If I'm hitting a backhand overhead smash, I'm going to get my racket like loaded down here, like this. This is my loaded position, like this. And then I'm going to go up, right? Then I'm going to go up, and then the ball is going to come down. So that's more of an extreme case, right? If I choose to hit offensive slice more so in the middle of my strike zone or lower my strike zone, and you can still definitely do that. The ball doesn't have to be high, but I can, the swing plane right here is going to look a lot more level. So you're either right here in the middle of my strike zone or lower in my strike zone. And even in lower in my strike zone, it's going to go high, low to high. But the thing is, my wrist is still moving the same way. I'm getting that wrist laid back, so it's important, guys, the strings face the sky, right here. They flatten out at contact, right, and go through. My wrist is still turning the same way. Again, it's not, I don't want it to fold over like this, or I don't want it to break. Those are the key things, all right? And, I'm not going to lie, it's going to take some time for each part of the strike zone, and depending on your strength, to get a feel for how flat you want to go with each slice, and again how strong you are. Now, speaking of the whole topic of strength, the higher the ball is in your strike zone, the more shoulder strength it's going to require. Right? I have students who, younger students who I work with, they can actually hit the low slice pretty well, because they have it's gravity working on their side, all right? It doesn't take as much strength, but they have zero chance of hitting the high slice. Once you hit the slice up here, at least for some of the younger kids I work with, their shoulder collapses in like this every time. They have no chance of hitting that shot, all right? Second thing, the flatter you choose to hit your slice, okay, the more you try to flatten it out here, the more forearm strength it takes. If you're unable to get this tip around here to snap at contact, okay, well, if you don't have the strength, either you have to keep this wrist laid back and carve the ball, or you have to lean into the ball. And that's fine if you want to hit a defensive slice, but offensive slice takes so much feel in the tip, and you have to just feel that tip going, snapping up, down, up, and over, right? So I guess my recommendation is, if you're not like even a fairly advanced player, you should probably use the offensive slice more sparingly. But once you do learn the shot, it's going to allow you to be way more aggressive with your slice, especially if you don't have a great option for high two-handed backhand or high one-handed backhand. This could be a great option for you. But for more beginner to intermediate players, it's much easier to implement the lower slice because you can just drop it like a pendulum, right? Again, you have gravity on your side. The one thing that might make the low slice just a little bit tricky, though, is staying on rhythm. Now, this doesn't just go for slices. It goes for any ball that's moving up or down or dropping really fast or lowering your strike zone. But there's a much more of a vertical rhythm. So when the ball's moving up and down, if you don't bend your knees up and down in sync with the ball, it's very hard to stay on rhythm. So when I'm hitting like a slice, you're going to watch in the dip, like see this little dip right here, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, on rhythm with the ball. Sometimes I'll go down with the ball like this. It depends on the ball. But you see a lot of players who can't bend their knees when they hit low balls and balls with a lot of vertical rhythm, that require a lot of vertical rhythm, they hit the ball like this. And then in that case, low balls are going to be just a nightmare for you, for everything. All right. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is to just practice that vertical rhythm if you're working on that low slice.
First, let's demo the offensive slice from that mid part of my strike zone. And if you look on the left-hand screen, you're going to see that swing plane much more level to the ground. I can still go from high, low, high, like I'm hitting a low slice, but I'm going to keep the strings much flatter. There's going to be some spin, obviously, but I'm getting much more punch through the court. And as you can see on the right-hand side, this is a pretty hard slice. It won't replace my backhand drive, not at all. But as you'll see here, it can be a great surprise shot to add a little wrinkle to your game. That's that heavy spin slice. I'll show you how I mix it up. Alright, a few top spins. Okay, this is another slice with heavy spin, so it kind of lands short. Now I'm going to punch it deep. And he doesn't expect this deep slice again, so he gets caught on the baseline a little bit. Then I drop the heavy spin shorter slice. Alright, and you can see how I'm just keeping him a little on edge. And again, this is that little surprise slice when your opponent, once you drop that racket face, you're not going to recover. They're gonna think they can attack off of it, but no, you give them that little surprise they didn't expect. It's time now for defensive slice, and I don't always hit it that high and deep. It's a hard slice to attack for sure, but you see me playing some high lofting slices here. I'm aiming up the middle to take away his angle, trying to get the ball deep so he has to generate all the pace. The only issue with it here is he has a pretty good forehand and he has a lot of options, and I'm not that in shape and he's making me run. So if I was a little fitter, maybe I'd play it more frequently. Alright, the thing to note when playing this heavier spin defensive slice, and you probably, depending what level you're at, you might hit it really high. But at my level, this is more of a neutral to defensive slice. I want you to see here, see when the ball drops, that little dip and rise, or high, low, high, that little dip. If the feed comes harder, I'm not going to dip as much, but that one it drops so I dip more. For Federer, he's going to dip, but see how he kind of plays that slice with a little bit of float? That's a defensive slice for the Pro Tour. So that's why you don't see many pros playing those high lofters, because imagine him hitting that ball against Rafa. He's going to get smoked. But at certain levels, it can be okay. At my level, this is a good defensive slice right here. Again, that sync with the legs, get it nice and deep. He's on his back leg. I can transition to offense.
So as you can see, guys, different slices involve very different body mechanics, right? We're going to talk about now using the lower body when it comes to both diffusing pace and creating pace, right? I did this video a long time ago. I'll link you to it so you can go even more in depth on this concept, but I want to review it here. So if I'm trying to hold my ground and create a solid base, right? Essentially, if I'm trying to deflect pace, he's going to put force on me. What position am I going to get into so I don't get knocked over? Now, if I have my feet close together like this, I'm standing straight like a bowling pin, and he pushes on me, right? Oh, just a little force, I'm a goner, right? If I'm really trying to brace myself, I'm going to get a very wide base with my feet. I'm going to lower my center of gravity as much as possible. Now when he pushes on me, I'm much more stable, right? I can push back, right? So when you hit that low slice and the ball's coming hard and deep, you got to actually get low, right? Lower your center of gravity, widen your base. Now, if I'm trying to send him flying and create pace and put force on him, he's going to come a little closer right here. If I get low like this, I can't push out of this low position. I can't push, right? Okay, if I'm going to send him flying, instead, I'm going to actually get closer to him. See how my feet are much closer together? And this gives me room to push and extend and rise. That's if I want to send him flying. So if you've ever seen John McEnroe hit, not only his volleys, he's up here, he's rising on every volley. Even if whether it's top spin, slice, or flat, you know, a lot of the players on ground strokes as well, you're rising. So if I'm really trying to hit a slice hard, I'm going to be rising in the air, maybe even off the ground, okay, if I'm going to hit it really hard, if I want something a little extra. Now, I also want to talk about weight distribution with your feet, because that's also a big one as well, okay? Now, for a lot of players, I'm actually going to get him, we're going to switch places just so you can face the camera. All right, if I'm trying to knock him over, what I'm going to get him to do is going to put 80% of his weight on his front leg, 20% of his weight on the back leg. So he's actually going to be, his weight distribution is going to be forward, okay? You can put your back heel down, all right? Now, see how he's not leaning, so he's not going to lean forward and off balance falling forward like this. See, he still has his center of balance, but 70 to 80% of his weight is going to be on this front foot. Now when I push him here, look, he's much more solid, right? As opposed to, now put your weight on your back leg. So put he's going to have now 90% of his weight on his back leg, right? Even if he is super strong and weighed 300 pounds, just a little bit of push, okay? You have no stability like this. What I see is a lot of players, when they slice, okay, they're slicing like this. They're stepping and slicing like this. Even if you're getting low, if you're stepping and slicing, you're actually going to get knocked back. There's no stability in that. So if you're playing Rafael Nadal, well, not really, or if you're playing anyone who's hitting the ball hard and heavy, you've got to see how, see how there's weight on this foot. I'm committing this foot. You got to commit, stabilize, and then slice right here. Now, that's a little bit different if, you know, we want to create a little bit more pace, right? You can still hit a pretty hard slice because you don't need, you know, arguably stability on slice is more important than trying to get more power. But again, if you want a little extra, instead of stepping early and slicing here, you're actually going to slice, right here, closer to the weight transfer, instead of weight transfer early and slice. All right, but this is your heavy ball, boom, and this is right here. All right, see how I'm much more level right here? That's if I want to generate more on my slice. All right, so two different shots. And we will cover weight transfer way more in depth on a separate video, so don't worry if I didn't cover all the little details of it for now.
We'll be focused on weight transfer in this demo. As you can see, when I get that weight on that front foot to stabilize, slice is very easy. If I'm a little bit late, like that last one was not late, but if it's not a strong step and committed, it's going to kind of fly on you. Here's that strong step, it stabilizes the whole swing. And these are some pretty heavy balls with a lot of topspin. For this demo, I'm hitting all slice returns. You're going to watch me not get my foot down. See that little step and hit? Again, one more time, watch my feet. The step is going to come late. That's fine if the ball is coming softer, not if it's heavy. Now I'm going to get my foot down properly. Alright, I have a much better weight transfer into the ball. He did a good job punishing that slice, but I hit a much better quality shot. Same thing here. Foot down allows me to stabilize, okay, when deflecting pace. Now if I'm creating pace, I'm obviously going to do the opposite. Kind of like a McEnroe style rise as I hit. This is for extra juice. I'm not going to demo this in points because I don't do this very often in points, but if you want to hit a slice really hard, it's possible. For me, I'm just not good enough to control it. Sometimes it will fly on me, sometimes I don't have the strength. Yeah, in theory, in drills, I can hit it decent off a fed ball. It's much different in a match though, in my opinion, but a very fun one to play around with and very instructive on body mechanics in general.
Now guys, as we bring this video full circle, I want to end you with just some kind of general rules describing, the two different spectrums of slice. Now, I know there's a lot of gray area and there's a lot of overlap, and it depends on what kind of shot you're trying to hit, but just take this with a grain of salt, all right? I know a long time ago, I did a video on hitting defensive slice versus neutral slice versus an offensive slice, all right? Now, generally speaking, so I guess you can call it rule number one, is typically when you hit defensive slice, you're going to have a lot more follow through. And the reason is when we play defensive slices, we want a lot of spin on the ball. So to get as much spin as possible, a full follow through here gives you a ton of racket head speed to just carve the ball, right? That's very different from when we hit offensive slice. We're going to use a lot more, generally, not all the time, but stop and pop here, or even a little stop and pop here or here, right? And that's because when we're hitting offensive slice, we're trying to take spin off the ball and hit it flat. And it doesn't take much force for a ball to travel fast through the court flat, right? And if we're steering the ball low over the net with very little margin, we basically need a lot more control and precision and get our contact point perfect and to be right and to focus the energy at the ball really well. Compared to swinging through, we have much more racket head speed. All right. If you've ever seen, we'll show you. There's one player on the WTA who just slices every forehand. Neil Liskey, she has a huge follow through like this with a shoulder swing, right? And that's for heavy spin. You've probably seen Federer kind of sometimes fake like he's going to hit a forehand and just hit this little like shovel shot. A lot of times it's a little stop and pop because he just hits that thing so fast and pretty flat through the court, right? Unless you're Feliciano Lopez, Feliciano Lopez, he's such a great slicer. He can follow through and hit it flat, but that's a whole new level for most people.
I probably should sort of pad this rule by saying as much racket head speed as you can control, right? Most times taking this big of a swing isn't that practical. Placement over extra spin is probably a little bit better. Now Nick Liskey at the top survives on the WTA with a forehand slice, which is incredible, and for her it's an effective shot. Now I'm going to try this out myself. It's not so bad actually. Alright, most times I'll use this or other players will use this as a squash shot out wide on recovery, but this is more of an on balance attacking with it. What's instructive is this slice right there, if you fire too early with your wrist, you're done. See how I wait? I take a very short swing and a very long follow through. That long follow through makes sure I'm not firing early before contact, which is what most players will do. They'll fire before contact and then they'll either break the wrist at contact, or there's too much racket head speed and they can't control it. When I make contact, my wrist is still laid back, and I accelerate with my wrist at contact. Alright, that's a stop and pop. Now here's a practical moment where I'm using that Nicolescu big follow through slice. For the offensive slice, we're just going to use much more of a stop and pop. Again, I don't need much more power than that hitting flat. Here's that little Federer, I call it like a little shovel shot, when he hits that fake drop shot and just punches it through the court. In hitting it flat, again, I'm much stronger with on this side of my forearm to punch it. This is a pretty hard slice through the court. Okay, now this is just fooling around after practice. I would never attempt or make this shot in a real match, but just to see how fast you can hit it. And Fed can definitely do it. He's that good.
Genius is always worth another look.
Okay, now general rule number 2. So a while back in the last video in part 1 on the slice, we talked about you're going to use a lot more shoulder for stability here, right? Because it actually slows down your swing when you use more shoulder like this. But you're going to use more wrist snap here, pa, to get more pop, okay, at contact and more racket head speed, regardless of whether you're trying to hit a ton of spin or you're just trying to knife the ball through the court, okay? But typically when we carve a ball, okay, carve a ball with more spin, we're going to assume that you have some pace to work with on a defensive or neutral slice. It doesn't make sense when you're hitting a defensive or neutral slice to use a lot of wrist like this. So when you carve a ball, assuming you have some pace, you're actually going to use a lot more shoulder here. See, much more shoulder extension. Okay, even if you stop and pop it, so you're going to be a lot of shoulder extension compared to if you're trying to knife it and punch it through the court. There's going to be a lot more wrist here, okay? And that's assuming the ball is sitting, it doesn't have much pace. If you imagine like in ping pong, the ball isn't very heavy, okay? Like you can use a ton of wrist in ping pong because quite honestly, you don't need much stability. But if you're hitting, a ball that has weight, okay, you better use a lot more shoulder. And if we're choosing to hit heavy spin off a defensive ball, okay, we're trying to get the spin and keep as much stability as possible. All right, this is not a good defensive slice to do this with your wrist.
At the end of the day, you have to sort of what I call balance the scale, or balance the equation out, right? Because there's so many factors. Your upper body technique that allows you to create more stability versus more speed, or your lower body technique, which allows you to, again, have all these different modifications. It comes down to what shot you're trying to hit, how much risk do you want to assume. From each situation, are you on offense, neutral, or defensive position? And let's say you might take a defensive style slice and just aim it closer to the line, and it becomes, in theory, more offensive, but just a different shot. There's so many combinations, you just have to play and figure it out.
And lastly, you can probably conclude by this video, but when we hit high slice, it's going to be much more wrist dominant. Low slice is going to be much more shoulder dominant, generally speaking. I mean, you can still use a lot of wrist on that low slice, but if the ball's low and you hit it too flat, there's not going to be much margin over the net. All right, so that sort of sums this video up. I wanted to do my best to kind of fill in all the pieces for you. This is really such a creative shot with so much variety, and you can play it in so many different ways. Let me know in the comment section, number one, if you're just having trouble or some of these concepts don't make sense to you. I'll try to clear that up. Number two, just comment below, how you're using the slice effectively in matches, both offensive, defensive, neutral, and slicing at different points in the strike zone. All right, so thank you guys. If you have not yet already, hit that notification bell so you don't miss my upcoming videos. Even if I don't upload as many videos, I want to make them, really in depth I really want you guys to learn and make this an effective part of your game. So thanks, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.